All right, I have my watch says 10 o'clock. So good morning and welcome to today's School Safety Advisory Board meeting. My name is Michael C. Brown, and I am the board chair. It's 10 a.m. Therefore, I will call this meeting to order. Please confirm the meeting is being streamed and recorded for the public audience.
The meeting is live and being recorded.
Thank you, sir. We will begin with roll call for the advisory board members. Dr. Tia McKinnon.
Here.
All right, welcome. David Engel.
Greg Phillips is here on behalf of Director Dave Engel. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, thank you. Soraya Nokov.
Here.
All right, thank you. Dr. Sharon A. Hoover. Dr. Hoover. All right. Megan Berger. Megan Berger. Thomas E. Albin.
Present.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gina James.
Here.
All right, thank you. Joseph Kamir.
Present.
Thank you. Sergeant Kevin Britt.
Present.
Thank you. Maria Nervo.
Good morning, Maria Navarro present.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. Carol Ellen Johnson. Karen Ellen Johnson. All right. And there are some names I'm seeing here, so I just want to make sure that I have everyone. Eric Ebosall.
I'm present.
Thank you, sir. Karen Bailey. Dr. Kelly Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Pamela Gaddy.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jaquetta Jacobs.
Present.
Thank you. Natalie Miller.
Here.
All right. Vincent Schiraldi, is that right? I'm butchering it. Is that person here, Vincent? No?
No, I don't see him today.
Okay. Sheriff Matthew Chris Foley. Sheriff, are you here? No. Chief Paul Kiefer. No. Leah Weiss. No. Laura Moody.
Present.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. And I believe that is all the names on my list. Is that correct, Kate? Am I missing anyone?
No, you've gotten everyone.
Okay. All right. Welcome, Ms. Johnson. Please confirm we have a quorum.
Good morning. Yes, we have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
You're welcome.
You are awesome. The last meeting of the advisory board was in June. The June meeting was recorded, and that recording is available on the MCSS website. As such, there are no meeting minutes to be approved. Are there any additions to today's agenda? Right, pick that as a no. So with that being, we will get started with the meeting agenda and the agenda items. As this is the first meeting of the 2024-25 school year, and given that we have several new advisory board members, seems appropriate to spend some time with introductions. I will call on members in order of roll call to unmute and introduce yourself to the group. Just want you to be able to, if you could, share your role on the board, some personal information, and a brief detail about the start of the school year. We have only set aside 20 minutes for this, and there are many of us, so we do not want to keep it. We want to keep it around 20 minutes, or so. Keep it around 1 minute each for your comments, if you could. All right. Let's start with Dr. McKinnon.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Tia McKinnon. I am heading into my 4th year as the Special Education Director for the fabulous Charles County Public Schools. Something personal, I guess this year, one of my foci is really increasing the parent engagement. So I'm starting a book study with my families, and our first book, oh, sorry, my background is blurred, so you all can't see it. Let me blur that. Seeing Ability, finding your path in parenting a child with special needs. And I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have Laura, Miss Moody, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Laurel Moody, and I'm representing MIMS. I am a veteran nurse, recently retired from Stevenson University. And the start of this year, I just learned I'm having a second grandchild in a few months.
Awesome. That is fantastic. No, it's exciting times for sure. Miss Gina James.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chairman Brown. I represent the Maryland Association of Non-Public Special Education Facilities, better known as MCSS schools, and I currently serve as the Board of Directors President. I am also the Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation Schools, which is a non-public day program servicing students with special needs. I would say something that's just exciting in general for me this year is we're celebrating our 50th years servicing students with special needs. And what's interesting about it is that this anniversary is the same anniversary of when IDA started. So I'm just really proud to continue to lead the charge of MCSS with servicing special needs students.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. James. Ziara, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Zaria Nukbi. I'm a junior at Winston Churchill High School, Montgomery County. I'm here representing the Maryland Association of Student Councils, so representing the student body. Something interesting and fun about this school year is that now I'm 16, I'm turning 17 in April. So I'm really, really excited to finally get my driver's license so I can drive myself to all my meetings and different events instead of my parents having to drive me. So that's definitely super exciting.
That is super exciting. So that is that first step into adulthood. So congratulations on that. We have Dr. Anderson.
Good morning, Kelly Anderson. I'm the coordinator of psych services in Anne Arundel County, which means that I oversee all the school psychologists here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Nothing really to share other than I've been involved with MCSS and the advisory board since its inception, and it's nice to see it's still going strong. Doesn't always happen with a lot of committees, so thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jaquetta Jacobs.
Good morning. My name is Jaquetta Jacobs. I am a public school parent. I have daughters that are at Meade High School. I also serve as the president of the PTSA at Meade. Something safe and interesting. I have twin daughters and they are seniors at Meade. And of course, we're enjoying all of the final milestones that accompany senior year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Natalie Miller.
Natalie Miller. I'm with the Social Services Administration. So I'm the education specialist there. I oversee youth in foster care and their education compliance over there. So I don't have kids, but I have all the kids in foster care. So the beginning of the school year was a little bit chaotic, making sure everyone was enrolled and timely and going to school. So that was the beginning of my school year.
All right. Thank you so much. Who else do we have here? Ms. Johnson, did I get you, Ms. Janine Johnson?
No, you didn't, but I'm happy to share. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janine Johnson. I am an assistant attorney general with the Attorney General's office, and I represent the Maryland Center for School Safety. And let's see, something exciting about this new year, which my kids, I have twins, also a boy and a girl, and they are in their 8th grade year. So we are getting ready to apply to high schools, magnet schools. So please pray for me as I try to push them through writing essays.
Okay. Thank you. I know that has to be some nerve-wracking times, but I'm sure you are well equipped for it. So
thank you.
All right. Mr. Albin.
Yes, sir. My name is Tom Albin. I'm the Director of Risk Management for the Archdiocese of Baltimore. My role here on the board is to represent the non-public schools in general. And again, specifically, I would say the big news this year so far is that the Archdiocese of Baltimore, we were honored to have 5 schools named as Blue Ribbon schools, which I think is a good reflection not only on the Catholic schools in Maryland, but all schools in Maryland. So we're very pleased and honored to have that achievement.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Ms. Gaddy.
Hi, I'm Pam Gaddy. I am representing Maryland State Education Association. I am this is my 28th year. I'm in Baltimore County Schools at Tapsco High School and Center for the Arts. I teach social studies. I also have a class of 2025 senior who I wanted this day to come so long, but now that it's here, I want time to stop. I'm not ready, but yes. And I've been on the board since we've started, I believe in 2018.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's go with Ms. Navarro. Is it Ms. Navarro or Dr. Navarro? Is it Dr. Navarro?
Yes, Principal Brown.
Yeah,
I believe we met before.
You're right.
But that's okay.
Make sure.
It's all right. Navarro is not a very common last name around here. Good morning, everybody. Maria Navarro. I'm the superintendent of Charles County Public Schools, but my role here is to represent the PASAM, which is the organization of all the school superintendents in Maryland. And I would say an exciting thing so far this year is I ran inside to have this meeting, but I was taking pictures of our culinary students. We converted a retired school bus and we painted it. We put an incredible kitchen inside the bus.
And now it is an opportunity for all of our students in the Pro Start programs or culinary arts programs to go out to the community. They're doing an event here for Hispanic Heritage Month. And so it's just a way for us to expand work-based learning opportunities for our students out in the community. So I was very excited about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Sergeant Britt.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Britt, and I work for the Frederick County Sheriff's Office, and I'm the SRO representative to the board. Frederick County Sheriff's Office has 16 full-time SROs within Frederick County Public Schools. An exciting thing on my side is I was recently promoted to lieutenant, so along with the pay raise, I get all the extra responsibilities as well. So thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Who else do we have here? Tom Alvin, did we get you already, sir? I want to make sure.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
All right, just want to make sure. What else do we have here?
Okay, Mr. Cormier hasn't
Cormier?
introduced himself yet.
Okay.
Good morning. My name's Joseph Cormier. I'm a parent of a student with an IEP, an individualized education plan. I'm here representing all parents with students with an IEP, IFSP, or 504. I hope that all of our parents are engaging with their county's CCAC or CASE, the Special Education Citizens Advisories Committees, and I hope that the administrators are engaging with them as well. I hope we continue to move forward with inclusion to keep our kids involved in not just the athletics, but the arts and the education as well. Something to shout out. My son's a 10th grader this year, and he is participating in cross country for his second year, and he has knocked 7 minutes off his time. So 35 minutes is nothing to sneeze at, and it's faster than I can go.
I think that's faster than any of us can go, to be honest with you.
And actually, Delegate Ebersol also, I think. And then I think you've hit everybody.
Okay.
I'm gonna thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna take that as you're recognizing me. We're very
I'm recognizing you.
We're very careful in the legislature to make sure the chair recognizes before we talk. Last and probably least, I'm Delegate Eric Ebersol, serving as a representative of the Maryland House of Delegates to this group. I serve on Ways and Means, where I chair the Education Subcommittee. I am a retired teacher of 35 years, so I bring a lot of brick and mortar experience to the job and here too. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. I think that is everyone.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Brown. Now that we've finished the introductions and start of year, I just wanted to remind you that the board needs to approve the agenda. So you did ask if there was any additions or changes, but we just need to quickly approve it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. I was just going back to that.
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Yes, motion to approve the agenda today as written. Do I have a first?
Yes, motion to approve the agenda as written.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. The agenda is approved.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. All right, so moving along with the agenda. Now, if you would look, we are moving right along and right on time, which is fantastic. So the first item on the agenda will be the Executive Director, Brian and Ms. McNeil, sharing with us highlights from the 2024 annual MCSS sponsored school safety conference that occurred this past July. Kate and Jessica.
Thank you.
No problem.
So I'll just kick it off. So in July, we hosted our annual school safety conference. Every year, the Prepare Conference brings together our local, state, and federal school safety partners teachers, principals, law enforcement, and mental health experts that support both public and private schools throughout Maryland. It's a chance for our participants to share ideas and learn about the latest ways to keep our schools safe. This event could not be possible without the support of our presenters, our exhibitors, our entire MCSS staff that just does a fantastic job throughout the planning and execution of the conference. I do want to recognize one person in particular who you're going to hear from in just a minute, and that is Jessica McNeil. Jessica serves as the chair of the Prepare Conference. She has led our team in creating and hosting another fantastic event this summer. We appreciate all of her hard work and all the work from our entire team in putting on a really, really successful event again this year. So we really want to thank her personally, as well as thank the entire team, all of our presenters and exhibitors for Prepare 2024. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. McNeil to give you a summary of this year's conference.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning to the advisory board. I would like to just follow up on what Kate said and just thank our entire team, thank our board members and that did participate and come out to support us in our conference every year. We had over 650 people register for the conference and over 482 participants. Year over year, we are increasing our participant level. We are, which is very exciting. We hope to get to over 500 in this upcoming year's conference. We've had some great speakers from anywhere from topics such as sextortion to artificial intelligence, to ideas and information on the teen brain. And we focus very heavily. We try to make sure that we hit all aspects of school safety as far as mental health, behavioral health, the law enforcement side, as well as topics that are interesting to the administrative and teacher staff. We were lucky enough this year to have our conference approved for some continuing education credits for both the law enforcement side for in-service, administrative side, administrative and teachers were able to receive credits for attending the conference, as well as this year, we were able to get our conference approved for by the National Association of School Psychologists. So we were able to get some continuing professional development credits for them as well, which was very exciting. In addition to the conference, we have exhibitors and partners that come out and offer some additional information and free services. So we try to encompass everything and give an opportunity for our partners and stakeholders to network with each other and really find out what everyone is doing in the community and how we can help each other to keep our kids safe. One thing that we have you'll see there's a quote there from one of our participants in the conference is we do have a survey that we do every year after not only our presenters, but after the event itself, so that we can continue to improve upon the event and make sure that we're providing services and fulfilling the needs as best we can for our participants. One additional thing that we offer every year is our art showcase, which we're very excited about, which is for grades 3 through 12. So we have 3 categories: elementary, middle, and high school, and a first, second, and third place winner. So the slide that you're seeing now shows you the winners for each of those categories, and they do receive prizes. It's continued to be a positive event. It's a way for the kids to showcase their feelings on school safety, where we do give them a theme, which this year's themes was safe spaces, which they present their artwork and how they interpret that theme. And we then showcase those at the conference, allow the participants to anonymously vote, and then we award prizes. We will be taking all the pieces have been showcased at the Maryland State Department of Education. That exhibit will be coming down next week. However, in December, we will be showcasing at the House of Delegates at the State House. And that showcase will be up for the entire legislative session, which we're really excited about. So we encourage everyone to go out and see the art and the descriptions from our students. And just continue to support them in their efforts in school safety as well. The next conference, again, will be at Turf Valley in July of 2025, July 15th, 16th, and 17th. We hope that you all will be able to participate and see us there. We will be opening up our call for speakers. So if you have any ideas or any suggestions on topics or speakers that may be great for our stakeholders and our attendees, please reach out to us and provide that information. We'd really appreciate it. Did anyone have any questions in regards to the conference or any comments for anyone that may have participated?
Where do you send the information for speaker suggestions again?
You can send them directly to MCSS at conference.mcss@maryland.gov.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we have one hand up. I think Joe, you have your hand up. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that I was able to attend both days of the conference this past summer, and it was just a really great spread of information, good for school staff, good for law enforcement, good for parent engagements, professionals, and I highly recommend that everybody make time for their staff to come up there in the summertime. It was a really good conference.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? Maria, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm wondering if we can get a list of participants, maybe by county. I think my colleagues would like to know who is attending, for what purposes from their counties, what type of employees. And so if that's a possibility, would love to be able to get that information to share with the superintendents as I also remind them about the upcoming conference this summer. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we'll be able to get that information to you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, on behalf of the advisory board members, I'll just personally like to thank MCSS staff for all their hard work in planning and hosting this event. There is a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into planning these conferences, and they do a phenomenal job. So I appreciate their efforts. To me, it is truly a real asset to Maryland schools. So I hope and know that it will continue. And please spread the word with your colleagues so we can get more people attending this event in the future. All right. Next on the agenda, we will hear from Ms. Bryan and Ms. Buckheit. Will share information with us about the statewide school-based tabletop exercises facilitated by MCSS. Kate and Kim.
Thank you again. So just for some background for anybody who is watching this live or watching a recording later, a little bit of background on what a tabletop exercise is. So it's a discussion-based activity that allows school systems and schools and response partners to participate in a discussion to test their school-based emergency plans. So whether those are their response plans, their recovery plans, it's an opportunity to bring everyone together in a controlled environment, a low stress environment, to talk through a hypothetical scenario and identify, hopefully, areas of their school emergency plan that they feel is working well, area of their school emergency plan that may need to be modified or updated, identify resources, identify maybe some missing partners in the room. So it's really a great opportunity for the participants to learn a little bit about each other, and really test those local plans without a ton of resources. One of the challenges with tabletop exercises, like all exercises, is it requires a lot of work on the front end, right? In preparation, so developing scenarios, developing materials, developing, excuse me, whether it's the discussion questions that are going to be used throughout the event. So one of the things we did in May of this year, if you recall, we hosted a statewide tabletop exercise for all 24 of the local school systems. We had participation from across the state. It was a fantastic event. We learned a lot. We refined our exercise for a second exercise we hosted in August for our non-public special education facilities in the state. We had quite a few participate. I'm going to turn it over to Kim to give sort of an overview of that particular statewide tabletop exercise and sort of talk about where statewide tabletop exercises are going to go throughout the next couple of years. So Kim?
Yeah, so very valuable, and want to give a shout out. Mr. Cormier was really great. I think when we first shared this information in our June meeting about, hey, don't forget about our non-public. So it really became a great opportunity for MCSS to collaborate really closely with the Department of Disabilities and MSDE to look at engaging. So we had over 50 of our non-public special education schools participate in the event. Shout out to former board member Lee Oppenheim, was really great about sort of nagging non-publics that hadn't engaged with us over the summer to kind of reach out and make sure they joined in the event. We chose to focus on a little bit more of a low stress kind of scenario. So August, it was, again, the very beginning of the school year. They had staff that were just coming back. So we didn't want to really, we didn't want to pivot to the type of scenario that would be very involved in terms of fallout and the requirements of coordination. So we used a weather event. So we actually used sort of a tornado that kind of touched down. Really what they had to do related to kind of communication with staff, students, parents. And we also, for this particular event with them, we did it in a 2-hour block of time rather than the 3-hour block of time that we've been doing it with the public. So we tried to really kind of meet their needs when we thought about that time of year for them. Went well. We got, again, very good feedback from all of them. And our intention is to host an annual event of this nature. So to continue to do a separate event for our non-public schools that really allows them to kind of engage with their staff and then local partners. The other thing that we will do, though, as we pivot, so just talking about our public school events, is we really will look to each of these public school events that we host to ask them to also engage their non-public private schools in the exercise that's happening with them. So to bring in members from their local private and non-public schools to actually participate in the event that's happening locally for our public. So I think MCSS actually does a good job of always trying to remind people that there are others out there, right? There are other schools side by side with you to engage in emergency preparedness. To then look at, so the intention with our public LEAs is to actually host an event twice a year. So the second Wednesday in October and the second Wednesday in February we're really kind of asking folks to hold that time from 9 to 12. This year will be this October event testing the reunification procedures. So basically an event has occurred that prompts folks to have to relocate from the building, and how you're going about the many different aspects and nuances of that. We're going to continue to use the format that seems to be really working well, where MCSS, again, does all of the work on the front end, as Kate was sharing, And then we live stream the event from the MCAP training room in our office. And then the locals have their local team with them in a convenient location for them. So they're bringing in coordinated emergency responders, school-based folks that really kind of make sense for them on that date at that time. So actually this Wednesday is that next public school tabletop activity. And then the February 12th event will be using a scenario that makes them test their communication procedures. And so we haven't begun to really plan for that other than we know. So the other thing we will say is we did survey our public schools in June and asked them for months of the year that were more advantageous for this. So actually October, February were selected by them. And then we also asked them which of these emergency procedures they would like to test. And they also selected the reunification and communication as the two different procedures that they wanted to test this year. So we'll continue to ask them in that February event. We'll have them look forward to the 25-26 school year and which what kind of testing elements they would like to do. So continue to try to get feedback to improve on the practice. I think that's it. So questions for Kate or I about either event, feel free.
You got one, Ms. James?
Hi. Thank you. I just wanted to say on behalf of the non-publics, I did attend that event for the one in August, and we thought it was great. It was low stress. I think we were looking for more high stress because we deal with high stress all the time, but it was really a great way for us to begin to think about our procedures and what we, the questions were awesome. Begin to let us know what we need to add into our plans. So great job. My one question though, I wanted to know whether or not we will be doing for non-publics the way we've done before. It was really helpful to have all the non-publics together because we kind of deal with some of the same intensity with students. Will we have another training as well?
So yes, so another tabletop like this, or
Yes.
or Ms. James, yes. So we at this point in time are planning. We are open for feedback right from you on a different time of year if it's better. Like right now, we kind of just in our heads sort of have that August time. But again, if you could poll others, right? And we'll be joining the superintendent statewide with non-publics actually, I think in 2 weeks, that meeting. Executive Ms. Bryan and I each have an opportunity to kind of talk with folks then. So we may try to get a feel from the group around timing. Right? Did that end of August work? We know it could be stressful, but was it helpful?
It was a little tight, but it worked. I haven't gotten any feedback from other schools, but as far as MCSS is concerned, we can pull to see when is another good time for the non-publics. And you would like the 2 or 3 hour block?
And so 3 hours definitely allows for a little more time for the brief outs, right? And a little more time for kind of dialogue amongst you all in terms of practices. When we crunched it into the 2 hours, we probably had less time for the brief outs. And we only did, I think, as you remember, like kind of one inject. So it made the scenario sort of simpler. The more complex the scenario, the longer the time. So yeah, if you could poll the group in terms of maybe time of year, and then and if there's a particular type of scenario that they would like to test, we can build that, and then the 2 or the 3 hour block, right? If they could do 3 hours, like when in the year might that be? That would be great. We'd appreciate it.
If you can just put in the chat who your information, and I can get that to you. Thank you.
All right, one more, Mr. Albin.
Kim, I just have one quick question for you, since we're kind of using the term non-public, I think interchangeably, it could have two different meanings. So with respects to non-public schools, as in, independent schools, are there any plans to possibly facilitate some sort of exercises for that group of schools? Or are you suggesting that the public schools are to include both, I'm going to use the term, both types of non-public schools in their exercises?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kate think through that a little bit, right? I know she's sitting there wondering, right?
Sorry, Kate, it's me again.
You're fine. So the first exercise we did in August was for the non-public special education facilities.
Correct.
We have not hosted a tabletop exercise for private schools, but we have not ruled that out yet.
Okay.
So that other group of non-publics. What I will tell you though, Tom, is on our website, we have posted the original exercise, the August exercise. So that the slide deck for that is available on our website. Any private school that would be interested in hosting a similar exercise, we can provide all of those materials that were used in either the May public school exercise or the August non-public special education facility exercise. So all of those materials we're happy to share. But yes, we are discussing it. We're sort of a little challenged, as you can imagine, with resources.
Absolutely.
So if it's something we can work in, we definitely will.
Okay, anything we can do to help support and facilitate that, we'd be happy to.
Fantastic.
And that might be helpful, Tom, right? Like if we did it in a coordinated way where we could kind of help again with all the materials. And thank you, Kate, for the point about that. The intention, right, after each of these has been conducted is all of the resources that were sort of put together and sent to the LEAs we did it, then become an exercise that lives on our website. And we really encourage then local systems to use those with their schools, to conduct something on their own, to kind of carry it forward, or to continue to do those exercises, right, without MCSS guiding it. But here's the materials, use them as often, as frequently as you want. But I'll send you an email, Tom. I mean,
Sure. And I just would advocate too, that I think you all have been great helping our schools, we'll use the term private for now. I think a big key, what you all bring to the table that we as private schools struggle with, is facilitating those relationships with, say, for example, public schools and other governmental agencies that we're going to have to turn to if we ever have a catastrophic situation, for things such as transportation and that type of stuff. So we'll keep pushing forward. Thank you.
Can I just interject real quick on that note? I do want to say that as we are growing our pre-K as part of the blueprint, we are going to rely more on those private education areas. And we do have a lot of special education students who start in public schools and then end up in a non-public placement, or the continuum now includes these private institutions where the students are getting drive-through services. So I just want to make sure that, just because a student is in a private school setting, they're still a public school student potentially, and we should be recognizing them. So thank you for including that.
Awesome. Any other comments and or questions? This has been good. All right. Well, I want to thank Ms. Bryan and Ms. Buckheit for that information. Again, we all recognize the importance of conducting exercises to test our emergency procedures, and MCSS leading the way in these efforts to help us be better prepared. So I'm very appreciative of that. We are moving right along with the agenda. We are making good time. We're going to move on to item 3 of our agenda. The next item on our agenda is information related to the implementation of the various requirements defined in House Bill 416 from the 2024 legislative session. I understand that MCSS has been very busy meeting these requirements. Ms. Bryan, I will turn it over to you to get us started and introduce our guests with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that.
Yes.
So we presented in June about House Bill 416 and all of the requirements of it. So today we're just here to provide an update of where we stand with all of the different deliverables. Joining Ms. Buckheit and I today is Dr. Knox. She is with the National Center for School Mental Health. So we're very excited to have her with us today. So I'm going to sort of kick us off on some of the initiatives that have been finalized so far. And then I'm going to turn it over to them to talk through where we are on the research side, and then I'll close it out on some of the final deliverables. So first off, the bill was drafted in order to put prohibitions on certain drill-related activities and training. Specifically, it was prohibiting the mimic of gunfire, explosions, loud noises, the banging on doors of people attempting to enter locked facilities, individuals pretending to be injured victims, people pretending to be active assailants in the building, and then any other way of conducting the drill that could cause trauma for students and staff. So a caveat here is this is only for drills and training or exercises and training that take place during regular school hours. So after school hours, the exercises and training, as long as those individuals are volunteers, there can be, parents, students, staff, faculty, and others participating with the school and potentially their response partners in any exercise they do. It just can't be done during regular school hours. So next slide. So the first thing, and I believe you were shared a copy of the final draft of the best practice guidelines for active assailant emergency preparedness, specifically exercise and training. So these guidelines we put together, they were required to be completed by October 1st. We met that very, very rapid turnaround of a timeline. We could not have done that, let me be very clear, without the support of many of local and state subject matter experts that provided input and feedback on these guidelines during development. So a really big thank you and a shout out to all of those individuals at the local and state level that helped us refine these. Zaria in particular, from the student perspective, even provided comments. So a big thank you to Zaria for that as well. So I'm going to walk through sort of the overview. You have a copy. The best practice guidelines, the first thing that kicks off in there is the recommendation from our office that schools across the state move to a common terminology for response protocols. Specifically, we are recommending the I Love You Guys. The I Love You Guys Foundation was started in 2006. Ellen and John Michael Keyes lost their daughter Emily in a school shooting in Bailey, Colorado. And on that day, Emily sent 2 text messages to her parents, one to her mother and one to her father, and they both said, I love you guys. So Ellen and John Michael developed these guidelines. They're using best practices that they gathered from school administrators, psychologists, public safety experts, families, and first responders to develop these guidelines and these protocols. The purpose of them is to have a common terminology when we're responding to incidents inside of schools. Specifically, we're talking about when schools go into what we're using the I Love You Guys protocol: hold, secure, lock down, evacuate, and shelter. What we have found across the state is there are quite a few schools and school systems that are using different terminology for the same actions. That can create a lot of confusion. One of the things we learned in the May statewide exercise is when school systems aren't using the I Love You Guys protocol, those 5 current terms, it creates confusion in the public. Imagine a scenario where one school in one county is going in lockdown, and the county next to them, the media is reporting that they're in, I'm sorry, they go into secure, and the media is reporting in the next jurisdiction that they're in lockdown because they don't understand the terminology. They're using terminology that they believe is accurate. So we're just trying to ensure that there's no confusion, ensure that no matter what school you're in, and if you transition schools, you're familiar with the same protocol that any other school in the state is using. So that is our first recommendation in the guidelines. Next, we talk about sort of where the research is, and I'm going to let, when we get to it, I'm going to let Kim and Dr. Knox sort of talk about where we are with the research. Then we get into the actual best practices. So we're talking about sort of the general guidelines, which are the drills in Maryland in public schools are required to be announced both prior to the school year as well as prior to the drill itself, that they are designed in a manner that is developmentally and age appropriate, that does not simulate gunfire or explosions, does not include individuals posing as active assailants, and does not include other activities that may cause harm or trauma to students and staff. We included in here that the use of weapons, real or fake, scripted acting of assailants or victims, including screaming or yelling, or attempted breaches of occupied classrooms or facilities must not be used as part of an emergency drill conducted during regular school hours. Again, those conducted after hours, the first responders and school systems that need to practice their tactical response should have the ability to do that, and they do have that ability, just not when school is in session. We talk and emphasize the importance of drills being conducted outside of the school day, exercises being conducted at different times during the school day, right? So you don't want to always conduct your drills, no matter what they are, at the same time every single day, right? You want to try during lunch hour, during recess for our elementary kids. So ensuring that there's sort of a variation in when that timing happens. So within the document that you have a copy of, we talked about multidisciplinary teams and the importance of ensuring a multidisciplinary team when you're planning these exercises. We discussed the importance of drill notifications, preparations, the key considerations when you're conducting drills, your post-drill activities. And again, we'll talk about some of those when we get to the research and the next items on the agenda. And then finally, we included considerations for specialized populations, including students with disabilities and English language learners. Additionally, within the document, there are appendixes, including mandated requirements. So on one, we're technically 2 pages. In Appendix A, there are all of the legislative mandates, both for our office, for MSDE, as well as for our local education agencies. There's also a list of definitions because a lot of the terminology is used. The bill was about active shooters. We use active assailants because the term active assailant because of the state's active assailant interdisciplinary work group. The final piece in there is a resource of links to documents that helped us build these guidelines. So we hope it'll be a very useful document for our school leaders as they plan and prepare for school emergency drills moving forward. So I think we're on slide, what slide are we on? Next slide, please. All right,
Yes.
So now I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Dr. Knox.
Yep. So one of the additional bill requirements was that MCSS collaborate with an institution of higher education. We were able to really relatively quickly turn around and engage our National Center for School-Based Mental Health in a multi-year agreement. So following this slide, I have kind of a help or a table to help you kind of see how the 5 years will sort of manifest and roll out. But part of engaging with Dr. Knox and some others at the center are to assist in conducting the research, and we're going to let Dr. Knox just share a little bit about what they've discovered. A big shout out to her, because I know she has devoted countless hours and has done an amazing job, again, in a really tight, a very, very tight window of time that we've done a lot of this work. We've been working on developing the survey that will be distributed to students, staff, and parents after every lockdown drill. So every school in the state, after they conduct a lockdown drill, and then are required to communicate that the drill was conducted, will include what will be sort of a QR code and a link to the survey. And we are kind of in the home stretch and getting this ready to roll. The National Center, so Dr. Knox's team will actually collect the survey results. So the survey will occur. They will actually capture the data and then will help to conduct that analysis of all of the data to be able to then share results. So I'm going to actually pass it to Dr. Knox to share a little bit about the research findings to date.
Yeah, absolutely. And hi, everyone. Again, I'm Jerica Knox. I'm assistant professor at the National Center for School Mental Health at the University of Maryland. Thank you so much for having me today. So the literature review attempted to answer 3 separate questions. So 1, what does the research say about the overall effectiveness of lockdown drills with active assailant scenarios? 2, what does the literature say about that, the psychological impact of those lockdown drills? And then 3, to what extent should schools implement lockdown drills with active assailant scenarios? So kind of getting at, you know, do the benefits outweigh the costs? First and foremost, I'll say that despite the many national conversations we have regarding active assailant scenarios and lockdown drills in general, the research base is shockingly sparse. As it relates to effectiveness, there are some mixed findings. So a few studies show improvement in perceptions of preparedness, whereas others that use observational findings show that students may not demonstrate all of the expected behaviors during lockdowns. There's also some variability in the studies regarding how the drills were implemented, which complicates how we interpret them. As it relates to psychological impact, some studies have demonstrated increases in anxiety and stress among students and staff, and perceptions of safety at school may decline. And there was also some literature that pointed to more pronounced stress for students living in high crime areas. So there's that interaction effect between the drill happening and community violence. Importantly, there seems to be more distress and generally negative psychological functioning after drills when lockdown drills turn into more realistic simulations. So the ones you see on the news with fake blood and simulated gunfire. So that's where a lot of that negative psychological impact comes in. So generally, and to answer that third question of to what extent should schools implement lockdown drills with active assailant scenarios, much of the contention around implementation stems from drills that deviate from best practices and they're not trauma informed. So the ones that we often see on the news where it says drill gone wrong, gone bad. Guidelines from NASP with school psychologists and school resource officers note that a lot of that psychological impact can be mitigated by avoiding those overly realistic simulations, especially for students, and just following those evidence-based practices and making sure that we are constantly communicating with families, students, school staff, so that all feel comfortable in their role during the drill and understand the purpose of them, and just keeping those trauma-informed practices in mind. Again, though literature is still pretty sparse, so the work that we're doing for this project in Maryland is super important just in terms of gathering more evidence and to help inform more comprehensive guidelines around those drills.
Thank you, Dr. Knox. So yes, one of the, Kate kind of shared within the best practice document, the announcing to parents, students, staff in advance the drill is going to occur. So that annual update at the beginning of the year, but then the day before, right, tomorrow we'll be conducting a lockdown drill. And then even at the moment, so at the moment that the principal or whoever's on the intercom saying that we, are going into lockdown, they must at that point in time also indicate that this is a drill, right? We are going into lockdown, this is a drill, right, to practice procedures. So making it clear in each of those aspects so that folks, again, that trauma-informed element. So this is the table I was sort of referencing for folks to sort of understand this cycle that will occur. So in year one, really where we were, Dr. Knox kind of shared what research, what literature is out there to kind of help to inform. The guidelines were developed based on what is currently available, as well as, again, relying on our subject matter experts, as Kate shared. So that has been published. You'll see the guidelines there, and then the survey. So we're again in our final stages of developing that and getting ready actually to share with Zaria and a couple of other of our subject matter experts to get some feedback related to the items to make sure that the question is actually asking what we intend for the question to ask. Before we then push that to our locals to start to distribute. So this year one will be analyzing that first batch of data, right? So as we start to collect that, year two then becomes responding to that data. So based on what Dr. Knox's team is finding after the collation of those survey results, will then inform updates to the guidelines. So the intention is that that initial guideline document that was shared with you will be updated annually, which is again required within the bill. And the survey may get tweaked as we find some items maybe weren't really hitting the mark, and we'll continue to gather. So that cycle of survey, gather, inform, continues actually over the duration of the 5 years with Dr. Knox's team. Questions on for Dr. Knox or any of this related to research and others?
And I can also speak to the survey a little bit too, if that's helpful.
Yeah, actually, why don't you do that and then we'll take Dr. Navarro's question.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so we are developing 4 surveys, a student survey for students in grades 6 through 12, a parent/caregiver survey for students spanning K through 12, a school staff survey from teachers to school leaders to instructional support personnel to operations, and an administrator survey, which will be given to just one administrator per school to get some school contextual information. All of the surveys will be anonymous. We want all participants to feel like they can provide their authentic answers to questions and developmentally appropriate to make sure each participant understands what each item is trying to capture. We have 3 main sort of areas that we'll focus on for the student, parent, and staff surveys. So perceptions of drill implementation, effectiveness, and then a psychological component. Perceptions focus on things like communication from the school about the drill before and after. What do people think about the training they receive for the drill, if any? Effectiveness focuses on perceptions of effectiveness of the drill. So do individuals think the drill helped them prepare for a real emergency? Did it help them to feel like they know what specific steps to take if something were to happen? And then psychological focuses on feelings of safety and worry. There's also some observational sorts of items for teachers and parents of K through 5 and special education students. So they get asked things like, or things pertaining to how their students reacted during and after the drill. Were there any apparent changes in mood or behavior outside of normal disruption? And then for the administrator survey, and again, this one is, 1 person per school, we ask them demographic questions about their school, as well as drill specific questions like who is involved in the planning of lockdown drills to get at that multidisciplinary team sort of item. What does drill communication look like? What does training look like? And so that's generally all of the concepts, but we'll also ask demographic questions to each participant to help us answer more questions with the data. So generally, with all of the items from the different surveys, we'll be able to answer questions like, are there differences in perceptions of effectiveness by school staff role? Are there racial or gender or grade differences in the psychological impact of the drills? Do school contextual factors like urbanicity, Title I status, et cetera, affect students and families' perceptions of the drill? So being able to, one, get some descriptives in terms of the current state of perceptions and effectiveness and psychological impact, but also seeing how those things are different by school context, by individual context, et cetera. So we're just about done with developing those items, and we are moving the surveys into Qualtrics to begin testing them.
Thanks, Dr. Knox. That's very helpful. Thank you for thinking that. Dr. Navarro, question?
So Jessica just answered all my questions, and Kimberly, the only logistics I want to elevate is as we get closer to those dates. You mentioned you might be going to PZAM at some point, and so if you're already kind of on our agenda, great. If not, it would be important to revisit this with superintendents.
Right. So to clarify, we're not on the PZAM agenda. So anything that you could do to maybe make that happen, it's actually Dr. Wright's. She has a sort of biannual meeting with non-public private school to review some stuff. So that meeting is in a couple of weeks. We're on that agenda, a little different, but yeah, we would welcome the opportunity.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Daria.
We have one more question, Ziara.
Yeah, so I just want to first share that I'm really excited for the implementation of this bill. It's a bill that me and the Maryland Governor's Youth Advisory Council pushed for a lot last year. I serve as the legislative chair there, so we did a lot of work on that, so I'm super excited. I also wanted to ask a question to Jerica. So I'm excited to announce that I'm going to be serving as a panelist for an upcoming National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine session on the effects of active shooter drills on student health and well-being. So if there's any document or resources on like these studies and any statistics that you could share, that would be wonderful, just for my own personal preparation for this conference. So please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, a lot of the beginning stages of the literature review surrounded the conversations that happened in a previous panel for the National Academies. But I'm happy to, if we're able to send the literature review or just a summary of different statistics and research articles that we found, I'm happy to do that.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ebersol.
Thank you for noticing. I'll make this quick. We worked hard on crafting this legislation, and I'm pleased to see how accurately and fastidiously you guys are working on our intent on it. I think, you know, we were careful to make sure the language was good, and you guys are doing great. I love hearing everything you're doing, and that's it. Nothing significant here except that I'm just kind of tickled.
No, that's significant. Thank you. We're happy you're happy.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Knox. Also want to thank.
Actually, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually there are two more bill requirements for us to share out on. So I'm going to actually pass it to Kate to talk about. It's not over. HB 416 was huge.
It goes on. Let's go.
Right. Kate.
Yes, so there are two other pieces to House Bill 416. So the first is if an individual feels that a drill was conducted in a manner that was contrary to the intent of the trauma-informed or trauma-sensitive requirements of the bill, our agency is to collect those concerns and then work with the local education agencies to identify if that concern if potentially that drill was conducted in a manner that was against our guidelines or a trauma-informed approach. And so we will have, also as part of all of this, we will have a link on our website of where individuals can submit a concern. And then our team, the regional staff, Ron and his folks, will have an opportunity to coordinate with the LEAs and then sort of gather the information of what actually occurred, and then have also a conversation between our office and our partners at MSDE to see if there's any technical assistance or sort of additional information we need to provide back to the LEAs in order to ensure that the drills that they're conducting during school hours use a trauma-sensitive approach. And Delegate Ebersol, thank you for the kind words. One of the other things we're going to be doing is on our website, we're going to have a whole page just for House Bill 416 and all of the requirements, so that when there are questions, especially for you and the other legislators about where implementation falls for this particular bill, you'll be able to go one-stop shop on our website to be able to find all of those requirements. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you in this coming session and future sessions. The last requirement, I'm going to ask Aaron. This is actually not required until the summer of next year, but there's a lot going on in this bill, so we got our team started early. And so Aaron, can you share the draft gun storage law content guide?
Yes, I can.
So the initial document that we put together, this was not shared with you ahead of time. And the reason for that is it is still in a very early draft. And we want to ensure that we have version control of the document right now. So, but we're getting close, but I'm going to ask Aaron to put it up on the screen. And then I'll sort of talk about the different elements that are in here, the resources we link to, so that you can sort of take a look at it. No, you're fine.
Okay, gotcha.
Got it?
Place it. Yep. Okay.
There it is. All right. So the most important piece of this is that very top, or I guess the second yellow highlighted area, which is Maryland law prohibits loaded firearms from being stored or left where an unsupervised minor has access. So that's the high level. There are some exceptions to this. So within this document, so this is the front side. I'll have Aaron show the back side in just a minute. We talk about the steps that parents and caregivers can take to secure their weapons. We also provide a link to some information from the state police about laws. Aaron, you don't have to click on them just now. And then if you can scroll down to the second page. So the second page, we actually pulled some existing content. It was developed by the Department of Health in their firearm safe storage guide. So we provide a link to that. We provide a link to a firearm. It's a free firearm safety kits that you can use or that you can obtain as a parent. So you can go to this link, tell them where you live, and it'll tell you where you can get access to free firearm safety kits, firearm storage safety kits. So I realize that this is the first time you were seeing this, but I will open it up if anybody has any immediate comments or questions. But also, if after this meeting you feel something comes to mind, feel free to email us and we'll, yes. So Pam Gaddy has a question. Is the will the flyer be available to the public? And the answer is yes. It will be available to the public. It will be shared with all public school systems as required. They will also be required then to share that with parents in their school, each of their schools. But I will also say the guidelines, as well as this, are tools that we hope not just our public school partners use, but we hope that our private and non-public special education facilities also use our drill guidelines, as well as the gun storage law content guide. So any immediate reactions from anyone? And Erin, will you flip up to the page 1 just one more time? And again, if you have comments after this, we have a few other subject matter experts and partners. We want to run this through before we finalize it. Once it's finalized, it'll be shared with all the local school systems. It'll then be posted also on our website. There are some hyperlinks in here. So the paper document, although it's effective, it's not as effective as the digital version.
And I can take anyone to the links if you want me to share the links. Not a problem.
All right. Thank you, Kim and Kate, for that detail. I know it's a lot of information, but you know, I speak for everyone when I say this is vital information, and you could take as long as you need to go over things of this nature, because I think everybody knows how important this the times that we're in, this information is to all of us. I also want to recommend, if you do have additional questions and or feedback, you haven't thought about it, or you think about it later on, please make sure you reach out to Ms. Bryan and Ms. Buckheit, because they'll be sure to answer any of your questions in the future. All right, again, making great time. We are going to move on to the next agenda item. And we're going to have Jan and Mr. Tweebill will now share information about the establishment of school mapping standards with members of the board, another requirement from the 2024 legislative session. Jan, I think you're going to present, sir.
Yep.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jayan Jabaraj, and I'm the Chief Information Officer at Maryland Center for School Safety. Joining with me is Graham Tweebill from Interagency Commission on School Construction, IAC, and we'll be going over the progress on Senate Bill 540, which is the House Bill 472, that established a school mapping program within MCSS. And let me pass it on to Graham for a quick recap of the legislative mandate listed on the bill.
Graham, your audio is a little muffled. Am I the only one hearing that?
Now we're hearing it as well. It seems a little connection might be bad. We're not hearing you at all, sir. Still not hearing you.
It's completely up.
That helps, sir?
Yes, it did.
I hear you now.
Thank you.
Apologies. I hope I don't get feedback. I got a new headset recently. I'm in the office and the office Wi-Fi is not great. All right. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Graham Tweebill, as Jan said, and I'm with the Interagency Commission on School Construction, or the IAC. We're an independent state agency with a mission to support a fiscally sustainable portfolio of educationally sufficient school facilities for every student in Maryland. As Jan said, I'll start off by diving into the legislative mandate that created the program. So in 2024, Senate Bill 540 was passed and established the school mapping data program within the Maryland Center for School Safety. The law allows MCSS to provide funding to our local education agencies to produce school mapping data for each public school, including public charter schools. It directs my agency, the IAC, to adopt a set of uniform standards for the mapping of the public school facilities, and it directs the LEAs to cooperate with the IAC in the development of these standards. Finally, it requires the LEAs to contribute data as requested by the IAC. Importantly, I want to note that for the IAC, this law provides the mandate to adopt standards, and for LEAs, it provides a grant program under MCSS to support the development of digital maps. In our reading of the legislation, the school systems are provided an option to perform mapping with the funding that will be made available. And those who participate in the program will be required to meet a state standard. I want to note that for the LEAs, the establishment of this program does not provide a mandate to complete the mapping or establish a deadline to complete the work. With that, I'll turn it back over to Giant to talk a little bit more about the data and mapping program requirements.
Okay. Next slide. All right, perfect. So the primary intent of this bill is to assist first responders with up-to-date mapping information through data in both electronic as well as in printed formats, so they get like quick access to it. But when we looked at the existing floor plans, nearly 30% of the LEAs have already mapped in some capacity and updated within the last 3 years. So when we looked at it, it is clear that these valuable data could not only be used for emergency response, but also for emergency preparedness, the fire code requirements, for asset management, for evacuation reunification planning, and so many other things that could be gleaned off of the same exact data. So there are many different use cases. So having data standards applied to these projects are really important. The bill clearly mentions, as you can see, some of the core required mapping components to accomplish this. And Graham, if you can explain some of the standards and the collaborations that are in works currently.
Yeah, so we know from the legislation that we need to collect a set of data points specific to school safety, such as key box locations for first responders, defibrillator and trauma kit locations, but we've also been coordinating with MCSS on some additional items like reunification areas, curb locations where they would first travel to get to the main entrance location. So we're seeking to meet the core requirements of the legislation, but build upon that with other useful data points for first responders. And the data requirements are going to be part of a GIS data system that I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
So we did want to note that according to the legislation, access to this data collected as part of the program is going to be limited to designated agencies and users, including those listed here. That includes the Center for School Safety and the IAC, but also the Maryland State Police, the Department of Emergency Management, the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, as well as our local law enforcement and local emergency management agencies. Not listed on this slide is support from the program by the Maryland Department of Information Technology to help ensure that the data gathered aligns with existing policies for state-controlled information, given that we're very aware of the sensitive nature of this data and that we want to ensure data collected is compatible with existing state systems now and into the future. We recognize that setting the standards for this program is not a one-time thing and will need to be updated and revised going forward as technology evolves. Next slide, please. All right, so when describing school mapping data, besides the public safety components that we showed on the slide earlier, the legislation is not prescriptive in terms of what technology is required to generate the data. As Giant mentioned, a number of LEAs are already working on this or have taken pilot programs of a number of their schools. So the idea when we set this standard is that the requirements are platform agnostic. And what does that mean? Really what we're saying is that there won't be any proprietary aspects, that it will be cross-compatible. And that the state will not prescribe a specific software vendor to do the work if local education agencies use the grant funding for that purpose. The standards are being designed to be mapped within a GIS-based system, like I said, in a 2D form of points, lines, and polygons. And we're talking about showing our school facilities as the sites where they're located, the different associated buildings, their floors, and individual rooms, and assets that are important that we showed earlier, as well as doors and roof access points and so on. So the standards are going to include specifications in terms of those minimum required elements and look similar to other next-gen 911 GIS data templates. So information regarding our spatial accuracy and spatial reference. Oh, sorry, I got a little bit more on that one. In addition to the data standard itself, we've been having some discussions with a number of the LEAs who have undertaken the pilot programs, and they have indicated that they would support the inclusion of a mapping standard or a style guide. So information about what these different elements should look like on a map so that there's consistency across jurisdictions. And the IAC and MCSS through Giant and myself are looking at really providing guidance that can fulfill the requirements of MCSS's annual emergency response plans. Finally, we'd like to put together a third component that's a little bit more of a user guide and for data creation and conversion to assist those folks who are looking to get started or who are working with other agencies to load their data into a template that will provide with the standard. Next slide.
Okay, the next slide is basically the timeline, and as you can see, there's a big gap on the 2024, and which does not mean that we're not working. It's with so many things happening in that, so many things that we couldn't list everything. During the July-August phase, we Graham and I, we presented this particular presentation in a 1-hour format to many of the GIS folks and the school folks and the facilities folks and so many other audience. And we presented at the largest GIS conference in Maryland. And there was a lot of feedback on from them on how the standard should be, what different types of data they currently have and where they're heading. We met with a few of the LEAs at this point, at least I would say 1/3 of the Maryland school systems, we've met with, as well as we did present in front of the 911 board and kind of showcased what's coming up in terms of the standards as well as the grant program. Everything else is tentative. The draft of the standards tentatively is aimed to be released at the end of this year. And then we have quite a few gap after that, specifically for refinement of that particular standard. So people can give us feedback on how it'll work and we could modify it. And we have a solid 6 months at that point to refine it to establish a final standard for all LEAs to be in the school floor mapping side. And followed that tentatively, based on the budget availability, our grant program will kick in, and then the NOFA could be potentially be released, as well as the school mapping grant program applications could be processed at that point. So that is our timeline. So there's a lot of feedback opportunity in terms of shaping up this particular product, the standards for school mapping in Maryland, and we are working in conjunction with everyone. We're working with a lot of state agencies. We brought in experts from Do-It GIO's office, as well as other vendors that we've looked at that are already being utilized by local education agencies. We're working with the facility folks, as well as local government and the school systems as well. So there's so much of collaboration going on in this project, and we hope that the standards will be very helpful for the school systems to do what they could potentially achieve in the future with this particular data. Okay. And that pretty much concludes our presentation. Any questions for MCSS or IAC in regards to school mapping?
All right, I do know we see one question in the chat from Mr. Cormier. As we transition to more diverse energy solutions, would this mapping also designate battery banks for solar as well as traditional fuels like oil and propane for fire EMS?
I think, see the question in the comments. I hope I'm coming through clearly. I think our standard, we're looking to designate all hazardous different types of categories, locations for our first responders. And I think that's a great subcategory when we show those in a mapped area. And I appreciate that. I see the second comment regarding playgrounds and service type. I know the requirements in the legislation require us to detail all the fields and playing areas in detail. in case they're used for staging areas. So I think surface type is definitely going to be important with that in terms of those staging areas into that category. I hope that answers.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will make sure to put my email in the chat too, and anyone can please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I also got pinged directly on this side. Just another comment that asked, the data must not be shared outside the US. And I believe we already have that incorporated to hold the standards for the vendors that data hosting should be encrypted, as well as during transfer and at rest, as well as should be hosted within the US, possibly within the FedRAMP configuration.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Graham or Jan?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Appreciate you. Moving forward with the agenda, we have one more item on the agenda. Our next item is new information MCSS will be making publicly available after this meeting related to behavior threat assessment. Ms. Buckheit will share with us recent work conducted by MCSS in this area. Kate.
Kim, you're muted.
Yep, got
Okay.
it. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so I'll get started, and Kate and other MCSS staff or even some work group members can join me with this. But we, so just a little bit of background information for everyone is MCSS within the Safe to Learn Act. So we are legislatively required to have created a variety of resources and tools for our local schools related to behavior threat assessment. So in 2018, a model policy was developed and published, and all of our 24 local public schools have a local behavior threat assessment policy that is developed off of that model. They also, all of our local systems, everyone who's in a local system knows this, right? We have school-based teams, training requirements, all of the sort of rollout of that. In 2023, MCSS developed what we're referring to as the Behavior Threat Assessment Implementation Guide, which really spoke primarily to students that may pose a threat within a school environment. So the multidisciplinary team aspects of how you're bringing people together to look at the inquiry stage, right? What evidence, what information is available on this individual for a team, a cross-section of individuals to come together to determine the level of threat an individual may pose, and then to implement safety and intervention plans. So behavior threat assessment, for those who aren't aware, is really all about prevention. The intention of BTA is to prevent violence from occurring. And when we're talking violence, we're talking targeted violence. So it could be an individual who's upset with a singular individual within the school, adult or other student, and is targeting them to do harm, as well as mass events, right? So an individual who's kind of targeting a location and potentially trying to just injure a number of individuals within that location. So within the model policy, there's also language, though, that specifically speaks to adults. So there are elements that our local school systems had to have a variety of different procedures to look at what you would do related to an adult that may pose a threat to the school community. But we knew that additional guidance and support was needed for our locals in that particular category. So in the spring a number of us came together. We brought together sort of a cross-section of experts across the state, as well as our national partners. So within the document, this is the other kind of large document that was emailed to all of you. You'll actually see on one of those initial pages, maybe page 2 or 3, sort of the different types of individuals that joined us. Thank you to those members of the advisory board who served on this work group as well. So this is intended to really speak to the adult that may pose a threat to the school community. In the very first meeting of that work group, the members of the group really were like, there's 3 different sort of categories or types of adults. And it ended up sort of guiding the way the document was structured. So the different types of adult categories would be an employee. And when you look at that section, it's kind of very robust. We engaged with an individual from one of our local public schools human resource department that was just invaluable in terms of sort of procedures and best practices for addressing and looking at an employee. So when we talk employees, we're talking maybe an employee that was released, that resigned, or was asked to leave, that may have a grievance against a school, as well as domestic violence type of dynamic. So it may be a current employee who is the victim of a domestic partnership, and that threat may potentially come to the school campus because of that. So there are a variety of nuances in that employee section. The next category for our caregivers. So beyond just a parent, we understand, right, that caregiver group could be a sibling, could be a grandparent, aunt, uncle who feels that has a grievance, that feels that a student or someone at that school has done harm, therefore is retaliating in some manner. When you look at the caregiver section, we were really very mindful, I think, in the intro of saying we are in no way saying that all of our parents pose a threat. That is not at all the intention. It's just in those very small instances where we do have a caregiver. The transient versus substantive becomes important. And I actually think it might have been Mr. Cormier who was really great. It's one of our inset boxes of not confusing just bad behavior with a threat, right? So an adult who may just be not acting appropriately given the setting versus someone who actually poses a threat to the environment. So there are some kind of recommendations, best practices related to caregivers. And then the last category is the unaffiliated. So unaffiliated, we're really looking at an adult who, you know, someone that lives within the neighborhood, just someone who has no real connection to the school, that the school would have no way of really being mindful of the fact that this individual may have a grievance, as well as 1 year of separation. So a student who maybe graduated over a year ago, who's now left that K-12 school environment. And again, we've lost touch potentially with that individual. It could be an employee that resigned or was dismissed over a year ago. So we're using sort of the 1 year as just a general idea when we talk about unaffiliated. The concept of unaffiliated is that we don't always have a lot of info. We haven't been able to really keep our finger a pulse on a person. So then in each one of those 3 categories, then you'll see that there is information on how do you recognize the concern. So we're not using the word identify at MCSS. We're really pivoting to using the word recognize. So you recognize that something's not right, right? There's a behavior of concern that warrants some additional inquiry. So the inquiry is really the gathering of info, looking on social medias, talking to other people, interviewing the individual themselves. What evidence, what is out there that leads us to either continue to be concerned or to decrease that level of concern that we have. And then that determination. So The threat assessment team, it is still a multidisciplinary team that needs to come together with an adult, but as we can all imagine, what that team looks like is different now. So we introduced two different team dynamics. We introduced the concept of this central system level team that really is, so for an employee or a caregiver, that's not necessarily something that may sit at the school level, that actually gets bumped to this sort of larger central team. And then definitely that unaffiliated, that the school-based team would not have the capability potentially to do a really good inquiry there. The other team, and actually I've got it on a slide coming up, is a community-based team that we'll talk about in a moment. But then ultimately the last step has to be for safety planning. What are you doing to ensure the safety of the individuals on the school campus? So we make a distinction in there too, that in some, where, you know, the concept of intervention obviously looks very different from an adult than it does for a student. So in some instances, it's really about just planning for safety, that we can't necessarily require some elements for adults, but that's outlined in each of those sections as well. So this is the that second kind of team that gets introduced in this document, and we are very aware that this is very new for Maryland and will require a lot of discussion at the community level within each of our jurisdictions. So this community-based multidisciplinary team is a new initiative in most of our Maryland communities. It represents that cross-section of service providers within a locality. So where all of you are, imagine in Howard County and Charles County and Wicomico County, right? We have our local Department of Health, our local agencies that are there. And really it's around mobilizing these local agencies to begin to develop this community-based multidisciplinary team that can assist with these elements of threat assessment for an adult within the community. Both helping to provide interventions as well as helping to really stay in touch with individuals that have some unique needs within our communities to keep everyone safe. So ultimately that team would meet on a regular basis, right? So once a month, bi-monthly, depending upon the, I think, degree of need. We see many elements that this team helps to serve. So that student who has graduated from K-12, and our K-12 schools have done a great job, right? Keeping a pulse on the kid, offering resources and interventions. Well, they now are moving beyond that community. What supports and what safety nets kind of are in place, and how do we help to kind of monitor for those students who may still need it during that transition time. So there are some national models that we've put in there in that document. So we sort of introduced this team in the expansion document, as well as some sort of hot links to some models that we've been able to become aware of and have had some engagement with them. Washington, D.C. has a system that seems to be working really well. And that particular partner was gracious enough to join us for one of our meetings and share a lot of their resources. But so that's the expansion. We're calling it an expansion document because it really expands upon the principles and practices that are already in the first version. And our intention is to start to engage with our locals with this new this new document, that all of this new information over the course of really the next month, 4 months, 6 months, year. Drew Turner, who's sort of my partner in crime at MCSS with this work, Drew and I are very aware that this is probably going to be more by system kind of rollout and interaction rather than, you know, a large kind of training that's sort of neutral for everyone. Yeah, Dr. Navarro.
Were you surprised that I'm gonna raise my hand on this? No. Can I suggest also, as you consider talking, and we're definitely putting you on the PZAM meeting, but you have earned your presentation time today with all these updates. So I'm thinking also, besides the safety directors, besides the directors of student services, there's a wanting to make sure we also time this correctly as you guys are thinking, and maybe as you come to present to superintendents and local LEAs, just understanding the best practices, the expansion of best practices that you're putting out there, what the models are for cross-office learning, because as school systems put this in place, it is not just sort of isolated to one or two departments. So just invite to, and happy to help think through that. I have excellent person, actually, my special ed person's right here, but my school safety person's also on the call, but my HR person's also very good. So happy to be a test case for you, to think through how to message that and how to get some input. And I think the superintendents would also, just from the various sizes and locations, would also be happy to give you some feedback on how to do that.
Yeah, we totally recognize that. That's why we sort of see this, and I'll welcome Kelly to join in the conversation. Kelly, Dr. Anderson, we've sort of had this conversation a little bit also with Anne Arundel too. But without a doubt, your departments of human resources, whether that's 2 people in a small system or 20 people, right? And it's a director, have to be in this meeting, training, workshop, right? Whatever we call it. They become really very instrumental in this work, which is very unique, right? They weren't a group that we had captured in the student-based one. So Kelly, feel free to your thoughts, probably since in the last few weeks since we talked about it.
Yeah, I think, when you're looking at students, I think the accountability and ownership for students is sort of pretty clearly laid out, right? It's student services staff in conjunction with administration, school resource officers, and all that thing. That sort of pathway is pretty clear. With employees, you really run into a different category. And so that's very much an HR responsibility. And, whatever your employee processes are, it's while we have this skill set to understand the principles of threat assessment, school-based people don't have the authority to engage employees in the same way, nor frankly are we qualified in the same way. I mean, a school psychologist is qualified to work birth to 21, but not with adults. So I think, these 2 pieces and the community-based multidisciplinary team, those are big lifts that involve a lot of people who aren't necessarily already very active in the threat assessment process. I think we have great knowledge of what makes a good threat assessment process. And I don't think those principles of threat assessment really change when the audience changes, but the authority and the who has the right to say what to whom is extremely different when it's not students. So I don't disagree with the need for all these processes, but we've managed to sort of wrangle our administrators and student services folks into understanding threat assessment, and I'm definitely a not it when it comes to trying to wrangle all the rest of these folks, right? It's really a monumental lift in some ways because they're outside the scope of our normal authority and influence.
Yeah, and that's where Dr. Navarro, you're there in terms of the thinking. That's why we know, right, our superintendents are going to be instrumental, and our HR folks, because we do say this within the document, that there's some element where we want the school-based administrator to be somewhat neutral, right? Because the possibility that this employee returns to them and now they're back in that supervisory exists, right? There needs to be some neutrality at the school, or a caregiver, right, that is continuing to have that relationship, right, with that school base. So that's why that central office, that central team, being able to take some of that burden from them, and how that looks. So we recognize, and the work group was just truly awesome. So again, we really appreciate some difficult conversations, and they were great devil advocates around how would this happen and how do we make this. And we get that this is a huge lift, but we felt at MCSS that it was important that we put it out there, right? That you know, this isn't something that just train and implement tomorrow. We get that we are dropping something that is maybe multi-years and creates some stress, but we felt it was important that we kind of say this is what we should be kind of working towards in Maryland.
Kim, we're very excited you're going to come out and present this to our AACPS folks.
Thanks, Kelly. And yes, Dr. Navarro, I hear you. I will reach out to Jason after the meeting's over also, and we can get something on the schedule to just start to talk.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be like district by district. I think it's important to think about this because it actually may be important tools that our HR folks may not have right now, right? And good guidance because they don't, you know, they're not in that level of thinking. So I do think it'll be very helpful. And I think it, you know, connecting with other LEAs is going to be important also as we're all kind of thinking through and digesting and as we implement this. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. And actually, I'm sorry, I see your hand. I'm going to come to you. So actually, that's a great point, Dr. Navarro, because so it's actually an individual from Hartford County's HR department that joined us and really was just invaluable. And that was actually something that she was like, we need training, right? Like, so it may be some of the group training that we create is for some of these like targeted individuals, right? That are in certain roles that this would be new to or whatever. But that's why, honestly, for Drew and I to engage with folks like you, right? Kelly, our folks in Anne Arundel, folks in Charles County, our other partners to, what does this look like? Like, how do we roll it out in a way that makes sense and, again, helps us in terms of moving forward with implementation. So we appreciate this group for being part of the dialogue and discussion. Zaria.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on real quick. I really like how the document highlights that group of high school alum, because something that's been a huge problem at my school, Churchill, and also my county, Montgomery County, is we have a lot of oftentimes like siblings, but just people who have graduated from our high school come visit our high school. And the interesting thing about that demographic is that they actually have the staff on their side. So a lot of the times the teachers, like, they know that someone who doesn't go to the school is in the school, but they're okay with it because the student's there to visit the teachers. And a lot of the time, if the student had a good relationship with the SROs, I've also seen the SROs be okay with it because they trust and know that person because they used to go to that school. And a lot of the times it'll be like the siblings. And I think a lot of the times that doesn't really go recognized because, you know, no one's reporting it because they have the adults on their side. So from my perspective, I see that as like a key demographic that has a lot of potential to do harm. And I mean, that's part of the reason we have to wear IDs everywhere now. But yeah, I really like how the document highlights that as well.
Thank you for that, Zaria. That's, again, like, great point, because you're right, that is something that happens in all of our schools. Appreciate it.
All right, we do have one question in the chat. What's the timeout for this rollout?
Yeah, feel free to reach out, anybody at any time with other questions.
Kim, do you have a timeline? Do you have a timeline for the rollout of this?
Oh, sorry. So timeline for rollout is that we'll be sharing the document with SSCs and our local superintendents, and then really starting to in the initial share out, we're going to actually have a survey to build a very simple survey to prompt local folks to share with us their needs or what they see. So sort of actually what Dr. Anderson and Dr. Navarro just did, but to get all of our localities to kind of share, this is what we would need, or this is how we would envision it happening. So really within just the next week, too, that we'll have that email that goes out to our contacts to get started.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Kim, for sharing that. Again, it seems like every agenda item here is very vital and impactful information. We just haven't met in a while, but all of it is good stuff. So I appreciate you sharing. Again, if you have any additional questions or feedback, make sure you contact Ms. Bryan and Ms. Buckheit, because they'd be more than happy to answer any other questions that you may have. As we get ready to close this meeting, I just want to make sure that we understand our future advisory board meetings. The scheduled advisory board meetings for this year are December 2nd virtually, February 3rd virtually, and May 5th in person. All meetings will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I'm just asking everybody, please make sure you are marking your calendars and plan to attend those dates. And
Chairman,
we don't have a Kim, we don't have a location for the in-person meeting yet, do we?
No,
Okay.
we do not yet.
Okay.
No.
All right. So hang tight with that information. That'll be coming out.
And Chairman Brown?
Yes.
It's Janine Johnson. When we were doing the vote for the agenda, the recording did not accurately reflect who seconded the motion, Mr. Cormier's motion. So if we could please have the board member who seconded the agenda approval, just for the record, we'd appreciate it.
I think it was me, Maria Navarro. There were a couple people.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Navarro.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro. All right. So before I move to adjourn the meeting, are there any additional questions or items board members would like to share? We have reviewed a lot of information today, so. All right. The next advisory board meeting, again, like I said, will be virtually on December 2nd, 2024. Please do not hesitate to contact Ms. Bryan and Ms. Buckheit with any questions or items that need attention before that December meeting. Yes, Tia, you have a question or you want to ask something?
Just a quick question. It'll be 10 to 12, the virtual meetings, correct? Same
Yes.
time. Okay.
Yes, same time. No problem. All right. Without any other questions or concerns, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Mr. Cormier, do you have a second? Who is the second?
Pam Gaddy.
Pam Gaddy. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this concludes our meeting, everyone. Thank you all for attending. I hope everybody has a fantastic Monday and start to your week. And I look forward to seeing everybody next time in December.
Thank you.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Nice
Appreciate it.